Sounds a little muffled.
A little muffled.
Okay, that's no good. 1 second. Let me do this once. Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep. You're good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Koenig, and I'm part of the education committee here at TRM. This is the highlight of the week. My friends, we have a great panel today with three incredible individuals, Danny, Rachel, and Jeffrey. And I must tell you from the bottom of my heart, I'm very excited about this. This has been a very interesting year, however you want to put it, unprecedented times. And what's going to happen in the next few minutes hour, is that those three very special people are going to each present their somewhat feeling or perspective of how this year has been for them. So this is very interesting. I'm excited. You all should be excited. So without further ado, we'll start the panel with Danny. As I said, it's not the floor, it's the screen. Danny, the screen is yours. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Sam. I just want to say thank you to the committee for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm very excited to hear what others have to share. All right. Ahead of Musaf, the Chazan delivers every year the prayer of Hineni, translated to "Here I am." This prayer is a personal one for him, as he accepts the onus of representing the congregation. For me, this is a time of the service to shut my sitter, close my eyes, and to contemplate the messages and themes of the day. It's a hymn taking place in the background, musical accompaniment amid my personal thoughts and reflections. The power of this prayer arguably emanates not from its poetry, rather through the collective humming at appropriate times when we, from the shadows, join him in harmony. Sound reverberates. This year, much like everything else, this prayer felt different. Since the last time we gathered in this way, all three of these elements, here, I, and am, have been radically altered, perhaps for the long term too. Let's start with the here. Here, in a parking lot, underneath a giant tent, seated far apart from our neighbors, instructed to stay put. That setting doesn't immediately strike me as an opportunity for connection. Yet here, we also are gathered together as one, despite the odds stacked against us, in the middle of a pandemic, to listen to the shofar blast. In the Torah, the word Hineni appears. And in the Torah, when the word Hineni appears, it indicates that a speaker is about to undergo a life-transforming change. The here of these select episodes is hardly convenient for the protagonist. It embodies an unexpected calling. That's why I believe when the Chazan utters his Hineni, he immediately says that he is impoverished, unprepared, and undeserving of bearing the burden as the leader on the platform at this moment. Still, someone needs to ascend on behalf of the others, so he volunteers. Instead of focusing on the personal imperfections of our Chazan, let's emphasize his readiness and his acceptance to take on the task anyway, along similar lines of the biblical characters before him. Erica Brown argues in a 2015 essay on the subject that, quote, when you are called to a Hineni moment, you begin to understand the importance of the invitation and then should be able to create those moments for others. Brown continues, the formality of the invitation serves as a validation that a big and wide possibility has been put before us. We must choose our answer carefully. That ties nicely into the second portion of the Hineni, the I. As a lay-led community, TRM offers on a regular basis a whole series of Hineni moments. When I welcome people to our community, I make sure to tell them that if they spot anything missing, they have the invitation to contribute toward the creation of that initiative. We want to say yes as often as we can to people who will add something to our budding community. At our current size, we might not be able to tackle everything. However, what we do, we pursue with all of our might, because fresh perspective is often where passion resides. Accordingly, in the past 6 months, I have begun to attend morning services as much as I can. I delivered pizza to those stuck at home. I called families to check in on them. I scheduled time with visitors ahead of this holiday to get to know them a bit better so their participation with us would feel marginally more comfortable. I led a game night in which one family mounted such an incredible comeback that their young son screamed with glee at the close of the event. I laughed that weekend when they were highlighted in the Shoal Bulletin for their remarkable win. I had no idea what any of these occasions had in store when I signed up, yet each in its own way has contributed meaningful memories for me during this year otherwise largely defined by tumult and turmoil. And it's through this lens of my own search for sparks of joy and heartfelt meaning that leaves me routinely feeling that I still haven't done enough. If we typically judge ourselves and what we've done lately, Rosh Hashanah introduces a more existential question to grapple with: who we are individually. Thus, here I am. Right now, I don't feel impoverished. I am blessed. I am appreciative that I was able to attend services and to join in prayer with some people I hadn't seen in 6 months or more. I am in awe of what the executives and various committee members were able to pull off in their free time to give all of us something to remember for the right reasons. I am more aware than ever of our communal spirit and also our individual resilience. We don't have to wait for the reading of Kohelet on Sukkot to recognize the inconsistencies and the contradictions we all experience, sometimes in the span of a single day. I am struggling. I am confident. I am isolated. I am inspired. I am upset I can't achieve more. I am reaching my full potential. I am impressed how I've adjusted to a different version of Shabbat from the one I've grown accustomed to. Nevertheless, I am deeply missing my regular Shabbat rhythm alongside many of you. As we look ahead at the year 5781 and consider our control and influence over what it turns into uniquely for each of us, let's begin with the idea of Hineni. We don't have any clue what the here will look like at year's end, but we certainly can begin the work to shape how we hope to complete the sentiment of I am ... when it's presented to us next time on the grandest scale. I want to say that I am proud, to believe that I am better off, and to express that I am whole again. Shana Tova, may it be a sweet year ahead.
Danny, thank you so much. Rachel, the screen is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much. You can hear me okay? Okay. So I feel incredibly humbled to be sitting here because the Shabbat Shuva drasha to me is always this like really, really big deal. And that's one of the things I love about TRM is that things that may seem like a really big deal, people are just able to kind of step up and show that it's not such a big deal. So I'm really grateful and humbled to be sitting here with you all tonight. So when I was thinking about what kind of jumps out at me right now about this time of year, and I was thinking about how it's Erev Shabbos, it's Shabbat Shuva, and you know what that means in terms of Yom Kippur coming up. And I was drawn to a sefer by Rav Eliezer Malamed, Nine Halacha, and he quotes Gemara Shabbos. I don't have time to get into to read it inside, but he quotes the Gemara that says that one who recites Vayachulu on Friday night becomes like God's partner in a world's creation. And then it goes on to say that one who recites Vayachulu on Friday night is escorted home. This is Safaria's translation, is escorted home by two ministering angels who rest their hands upon his head and say, your guilt shall depart and your sin be purged. It's a quote from Yeshayahu, Besar avonecha v'chatatcha tichutar. And that Shabbos is connected to tshuva. And if we look even at the phonetic similarities between the words Shabbat and tshuva, we have the tav, the shin, the bet. And that indeed on Shabbos, we remember the creator of the world, return to all the positive strivings of our souls, One who recites Vaychulu on Friday night gives expression to the deep significance of Shabbos. And by doing so, this is very powerful, by doing so, he merits true repentance and the forgiveness of his sins. So Vaychulu is pretty powerful. We hear that Vaychulu, you say Vaychulu, recite it, which interesting also, reciting it, verbalizing it on Friday night becomes like God. You become like God's partner in the world's creation. And you also, you can merit true repentance and forgiveness of sins. And it's really interesting to me to see the intricate connection made between Shabbos and Shuva. Because, I mean, when I think of Shabbos, I think of Shabbos as this time where we're very present, where, there's a focus on Oneg Shabbos. We don't work, we don't make business calculations. We try not to talk too much about worldly matters. We try not to give bad news. We walk differently. We talk differently. We have festive meals. We don't really focus on personal bakashot. We don't have our usual Shemona Esrei. I grew up in a house that followed the Minhag Agra, where we didn't say Pas Ayach Asreinu in the benching because it goes into personal bakashas. So here it is. We have a very different way of doing things on Shabbos. And then when you look at Shuva, Shuva is often, hi, there's my sister. I don't know why my sister's coming up on my screen, but anyway, Shuva can have a very somber feel to it. And part of that could be the education that we have growing up about Shuva, that we need to get honest with ourselves and just reflect on our wrongdoing. And, we're clapping ourselves on the chest and think about the impact of our actions and swallow our pride and go make amends. And, we've been saying slichos and we talk about our mistakes. There's a lot of fears, and we talk a lot about chait, right? We, on Yom Kippur, we're talking, al chait, and we're going on. And I want to expand a bit on personally what the word chait has meant for me and how it has shifted. So when I think about when it shifted for me, I remember years ago, I was standing in shul and I was 9 months pregnant with my first child. And there was a woman sitting next to me I never met. And she started talking to me and she asked me if she could share with me, a Dvar Torah related to pregnancy. I was like, okay, fine. And she said to me that back in the day of korbanot, when a woman was postpartum, she would give a korban chatas. And that the reason that's often quoted is that perhaps during labor pains, during delivery, the woman might have said certain things in her place of pain, might have said some regrettable things to her husband, and now therefore should go give a korban chatas because she said those things. And this woman shared with me that the Shlach HaKodesh, and I regret that I did not have enough time. I tried looking it up, but was not able to find it inside. That the Shlach HaKodesh gives an answer that really kind of shifted the way I look at chait. That basically, that when we look at chait marks a decline in our level of spirituality. And that when a woman is pregnant, she is co-creating with God. So she's on a different kind of spiritual level. And that when she gives birth and she's postpartum, she has now experienced a drop in her level of spirituality, and therefore she goes to give a korban chatas. So it's not that she goes to give a korban chatas because she did something wrong per se, but that because she experienced a decline in her level of spirituality. And that really shifted the way I conceptualized chait, because I think that when we look at chait as just as I misbehaved and I'm bad and now I need to kind of clean up my act, when we look at it that way versus when we look at it as I have become distant from God, I have declined in my kind of proximity to God, it changes the way we approach tshuva. And so when we look at tshuva as essentially as a return, as a restorative process that's intended to bring us back to a state not so much about cleanliness, but about closeness and to God and to our potential and to our capacity to create. And there's a creative process to tshuva because it allows us to create better relationships, better versions of ourselves, to, even the idea, and I see this clinically as a therapist, that when we are walking around with grudges and a lot of beef with other people, it takes up a lot of space mentally. And when we are able to repair those relationships, it doesn't mean that we're going to become best friends with those people again, but when we're able to clear the air and have those what can be difficult conversations with people and restore a sense of communication and make amends and take accountability, it frees up space for people to focus on other aspects of their lives and be able to be more creative in the world and to work more towards their potential. And when I look at Yom Kippur, and I see it as this team huddle, there's a real aspect of this team, but there's also a very personal process going on with God. And we hope that we can take the feelings of Yom Kippur, that restorative sense, and bring it to the rest of the year. Now, Shabbos is restorative as well and has the capacity to be restorative. I mean, we say in L'Chadodi, Shabbos si mikor habracha, right? It's the source of bracha. There's a lot of potential for Shabbos to be a restorative place for us, and we could bring that to the rest of the week. And I think when I think about what we've gone through this year and how so much of our lives slowed down, and it has forced many of us to think in more creative ways, and it has forced many of us to look at community in more creative ways. And one of the things I often thought about over the last 6 months is, who am I if many of the things that have made me feel like myself, I can't do right now in terms of activities? And that's something a lot of people have experienced right now in terms of identity. And these months have forced us to really stretch in ways that we didn't know possible. And what I've tried to focus on is, since there's so much bad news and there's so many things out there. I mean, every time I read the media, but I try to focus on seeing the ways that I see levels of humanity that are really uplifting. I still remember when our hospitals were overwhelmed in New York City, and I saw a post on Facebook by someone who was part of Hatzalah, and he wrote, I didn't even know him, it was in some group, and he said, I'm an EMT, and I'm wondering, why can't we just, and again, I don't know if this was not necessarily a medically viable option, but he said, if they need me and I can manually stand and, do one of those bag things, I don't even know what it's called, because they were running out of ventilators. He was saying I could stand for 12 to 18 hours and manually kind of squeeze the bag to help someone who can't breathe. And I remember reading that and just being like, wow, we see a whole other level of humanity that can be brought out in these times. And so as I go into Yom Kippur this year, and I'm very aware that if I start to compare Yom Kippur last year, Yom Kippur this year, it's apples and oranges. But I think looking at the creativity that we have been able to develop amongst our community, amongst ourselves, and being able of how do we connect with each other when the ways that we typically connect are not possible, it gives me a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration for what we can continue to create together and how we can continue to uplift each other to not just take care of each other, but to help us all become better versions of ourselves. So with that, thank you so much. And I wish you all a great Shabbos and a meaningful Yom Kippur.
Thank you, Rachel. Jeffrey, please.
I love this minion. I'm going to ask a favor, though, because there are 23 participants on right now and only 5 cameras in operation. So if you would be so kind, there's Dave Glazer. Thank you, Gabe. I want to see who I'm talking to. Thanks, Brad. If you're not willing or you're in your pajamas or whatever, I understand. But it's that much more meaningful for me, and this is hard enough. So any connection we can make makes that much easier. I won't name you, but we can all see who's not turning their cameras on because your names are up there. So.
Grandma, turn your camera on. Grandma. Try it.
You can cook, Gabe. We're fine.
I don't know how, Rachel. I turned it off before.
It's about being on.
That's funny.
So what I want to share with you is something that I'm working on in my own tshuva this holiday season, and one of my own New Year's resolutions has been to work on my own sense of being present, which is why I ask people to be present with me while I talk about that, because this is my therapy and I don't have the money or the time to do it any other way, so I'm going to do it with all of you for the next few minutes. And I've been thinking a lot about being distracted and the opposite, which is really being present and being in the moment with the people that I am with in that particular moment. And I'll start, because I'm contractually bound to mention Parshat Shavua, with an idea that comes out of this week's Parsha, which is Ha'azinu. And when Moshe begins this great poem, this great shira of Ha'azinu, he calls upon Shamayim Va'aretz to listen He says, Hazinu hashamayim v'adabera v'tishma haaretz imrei pi. Listen, skies, listen, heavens, and I will speak, and the earth will hear the utterings of my mouth. And Rashi says he's calling on the sky and the land as his witnesses, because Moshe knew that he was only flesh and blood. He wouldn't live forever, but the sky and the land, they're there forever. So they would be excellent witnesses to everything that he was going to then put onto Bnei Israel. And I've been thinking a lot about that idea of bearing witness and being there for a long time to bear that witness. And that gets to this idea of distractibility, because certainly since this was a problem for me before, again, you're my therapist, this was a problem for me before this whole virus hit our world and changed everything that we know. But the sheer amount of emails and texts and phone calls and WhatsApps and Slack notifications and everything that are flying at me, and all of us, I think, really on a day-to-day basis, as we try to accomplish everything that we try to do. And then we fool ourselves and say that we're now going to multitask. And a friend of mine reminds me that the human brain, I would say the male human brain, cannot really do more than one thing at a time. So we pretend that we're doing, when we really just start slowing down and freezing up and trying to do 6 things at once and not really doing any of them well. But what ends up happening is, if I'm talking to somebody and then I get too distracted and I lose where I am in that moment, and that's a problem, which I would like to focus on for myself in this, especially now and in this time of self-reflection. One, they say, and people who know say this with great conviction, people who worked with Ruth Bader Ginsburg say that this was one of her truly great qualities, that she had the ability to focus and to be present. And a number of people who worked with her said, there's some great stories, but she was one of the few, many of the Supreme Court justices back in their earlier in their careers actually argued cases in front of the Supreme Court, but she was one who focused particularly on issues of equality, whether it was equality for women, equality for men, and she would often be arguing a case in front of the Supreme Court, and one of the justices, which is, they would ask a question, and she would stop, and she would pause for maybe 20 seconds. I paused just now for about 4. She paused for 20 seconds, and of course, the justices in those days were all men, and they would start to, the modern day term is, they would start to mansplain her what the question was that they had just asked. Said, no, what I was trying to ask you, counselor, and she was not, that's not why she stopped. She stopped because she was thinking about what they had just asked her, and she was thinking about what her response should be. She was being very thoughtful and very much there. And when she would respond, they would understand. That's why she didn't stop because she was confused or because she didn't understand the question. She stopped because she was thinking, exactly how do I answer that question that was just asked of me in this Supreme Courtroom? That's inspiring to me. So she was fully in that moment. Chizkuni says, so Rashi says that the Shamayim V'Aretz are witnesses and they're eternal witnesses. He also says that the Shamayim V'Aretz would be the conveyors of punishment, because then the land would dry up if Bnei Israel, don't listen, and the produce won't grow from the land, and the sky will stop raining. But Chizkuni says that, can I share a screen, Dave? No, I can't. But anyway, Chizkuni, I would share it with you, but I'll read it to you. Chizkuni says, he focuses on these 2 verbs. The difference between lahazin and lishmoa. Lahazin means, he says, to really listen in and to focus and to pay attention. And lishmoa means to hear. And he says that when Moshe said, Hazini, hold on, let me just move this over so I can see it. Hazina Shamayim, it says, Moshe Rabbeinu in that moment was far away from, he was down on the earth, he was far away from the sky, and he was standing on the land, and therefore he said, Ha'azini Shamayim, Shamayim, listen, lean in, listen closely, because he was far away. Because when we say lahazin, it means to kind of pay closer attention. And he said, Shim'u, Hazin Shamayim the Tishma Haaretz Imri Pi, the land should listen, because he was standing right there on the ground. Then he has to explain why in the Navi Yeshayahu the order is reversed, but we'll get into that at a different time. But the trick for us all, I think, in this era of distraction, which was an era of distraction even before the coronavirus gave us even more things to be distracted by, is to not just be shomea, but really to be ma'azinim, to really listen in and focus. There's one of the al-chaits, because I looked there's an al-chait, which is al-chait shechatanu lefanecha be'inayim ramot, with so Art Scroll translates it as haughty eyes or eyes that are, but einayim ramot means I'm not looking at you, I'm looking up. I'm not focusing on what's going on right in front of me right now. And for me, again, I'm not speaking to any, you're my therapist, but for me, that's something that I need to work on, is my einayim ramot, is not looking over the shoulder or thinking about the next thing, or even when listening, not trying to anticipate what I should say to the person, but really listen to the person who's speaking to me and listen to what they're saying. I had a friend in yeshiva who I cannot name because he once shared a chiddush that he had thought of. He said, I thought of that during the Chazarat Hashatz, in the repetition of the Amidah. And he said to me afterwards, he said, I really thought of it when I was saying Shemona Esrei, but you're not allowed to say that to people. You're supposed to really be focusing on davening and not thinking about Divrei Torah. You're supposed to be thinking about the words. So the challenge for me, and maybe for some others of us, is not to be thinking beyond, but to be thinking and be present in that moment. Maybe that means, and this is something I've been trying to do, not always successfully, when someone comes into my office in school, to actually not just look away from the screen where emails keep popping up and things like that, but actually shutting it off or turning it away, or actually turning off a device when I'm trying to be there with my spouse or with my children. My family, if they're listening, are laughing because they know I don't do them. This is something I'm going to try to do, or to try to talk to one person at a time, because otherwise there's too many voices and too many things to process. What's been interesting to me with what Zoom allows is for all of us to be either equally present or equally absent. So right now we have some, how many people we got? We got 20 people here who are all here together, and Gabe's making dinner and this one's doing that, but we're all equally present in this moment. And Zoom allows us to do that. And that's a gift. And that's, I think, one of the gifts that we'll keep with us after this, God willing, is all done and gone. But it also is a chance for us to, that's why I had the cameras turned on, except for Rachel's grandma, because we want to, it's easy to pretend that you're there and not be there. So that's another challenge that I've been thinking of. But this should be a season of us getting over our einayim ramot and really being present and really being there for each other, because we are a model of that as a kehillah, as a community. And I know we can take that model and bring it back into our own lives, whether it's at home, whether it's at work. Wishing all of us much hatzlacha in doing that, and above all, a healthy year. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity now to thank each of our panelists for enriching us with your wisdom, Torah, and first and foremost, your menschlichkeit. I can feel it, it's real, it's genuine. So it makes sense that the three of you were here tonight as panelists at this very important moment. Now, if you haven't had a chance yet, if you're planning to attend any of the davening, please sign up. This week, Shabbos Mincha is followed by Shabbat Shuva Drasha and Marif. And as always, please look at our website, emails, and TRM WhatsApp for any of our programming. I would like to take this opportunity again to thank you for everyone for tuning in. Gemar Chatima Tova. And as my late Zaidi would say, Gemar Chasima Toive and Agit Gebench Yur. All the best.
Amen.